In this part, I want to talk about the primary and secondary lymphatic organ. In the previous video, I talked about the primary and secondary lymphatic organs. The primary lymphatic organs are the organs like bone marrow and thymus, and they can make the lymphocyte. And the secondary lymphatic organs are the organs which host the lymphocyte and they start fighting against the pathogens. And in this part, first I want to talk about red bone marrow and thymus. The red bone marrow can make B lymphocyte, and the thymus can make T lymphocyte. The red bone marrow is located between the trabeculi of the spongy bone and in the flat bones of the skull, the ribs, sternum, and the vertebrae, ossicocci, and head of the humerus and the femur. This is the site of hemopoiesis, as you know about the red bone marrow. The production of all types of blood cells take place in the red bone marrow. As you know, we have the lymphoid stem cell, which is differentiated from the pluripotential stem cell in our red bone. This lymphoid stem cell at first, we have lymphoblast from the lymphoid stem cell. This lymphoblast do its maturation in the red bone marrow and change to B cell. If it migrates to thymus and do maturation in the thymus, we call it T cells. So in our red bone marrow, we can make lymphoblast, which is the precursor of T and B lymphocyte. If maturation takes place in bone marrow, we call it B. And if maturation takes place in thymus, we call it T lymphocyte. The thymus involved in T lymphocyte maturation. Let me show you this picture. The thymus is located in the mediastinum, and you know that the mediastinum is located between two pleural cavity in our thoracic cavity. The first picture shows you the thymus of the newborn, and the second picture shows you the thymus of the adult. And you see that the thymus is bigger in the newborns and during childhood when we compare it with the adulthood. So the size of thymus become smaller and smaller. The thymus has two lobes, right lobe and left lobe, and these two lobes are connected together with a small part, a horizontal part, which we call it isthmus. And inside the thymus, we have different compartments, and each of these compartments is called one thymic lobule, and the thymus is covered by a tissue capsule from outside. In this picture, you can see the histological structure of the thymus. This is a thymus from a child, and this thymus is a thymus from the adult. The thymus is covered, as you see here, with a dense, irregular connective tissue, and we call it tissue capsule. From the tissue capsule, we have some trabeculi which invaginate to the organ and make different compartments. These compartments are complete, and we have different lobules in each of thymic lobes. In each lobule, as you see in this picture, we have one part which is darker, we call it cortex, and one part which is lighter, and we call it medulla. So each thymic lobule is made up of two parts. One part is located around, we call it cortex, and one part is in the center, and we call it medulla. The thymus contains large number of T cells and a scattered dendritic cell, epithelial cell, and macrophages. Immature T cells migrate from the bone marrow to the thymus, where they do multiplication and begin to become mature. The dendritic cell come from our monocyte, and we call them dendritic cell because they contain many long and branched projection, and it's very similar to the dendrite of the neurons. Because of that, we call them dendritic cell, and these dendritic cells are very important for the process of maturation. As discussed shortly, dendritic cell in the other part of the body, such as lymph node, play a key role in immune response. Each of the specialized epithelial cells have many cell process, and when these cell process, which are, imagine that this is one cell, and these are the cell process which come out of the cell. This is the other cell, and these are the cell process. Between the cell process of epithelial cell, we have many lymphocytes, and the number of these lymphocytes between two cells are up to 50 lymphocytes. These epithelial cells help education of the immature T cell and make them mature. In the process of maturation, this education is like this. The immature T cell distinguish self from non-self cell. So if, for example, one foreign body come to the body, if one cell from the other person come to our body, then these T cells start to identify the foreign cell and non-self cell. And additionally, they can produce hormones that are very important for the process of maturation and graduation. This hormone, which is secreted from the epithelial cell, is called thymosin or thymic hormone. You need to know that the immature T cells are located in the cortex. I want to draw one thymic lobule for you. Imagine that this is one of the lobules, and here you have cortex, and in the center you have medulla. The cortex is darker and the medulla is lighter. The location of our immature T cells are in the cortex, and when they become mature, they come to the medulla. But not all of our immature T cells become mature. Only 2% of T cells become developed and graduate into mature cell, and the remaining cell do apoptosis, and they undergo dying, a programmed dying of the cells, and we have the cell debris in the center of each of these medulla in our thymic lobule. Mature T cells leave the thymus via the blood and are carried to the lymph node, the spleen, and the other lymphatic tissue, where they populate parts of these organs and tissues. And as I told you, in infants, the thymus is large with the mass of about 70 grams. After puberty, adipose tissue, as you see here, and the areolar connective tissue begin to replace the thymic tissue. By the time a person reaches maturity, the gland has atrophy a lot, and in old age, this gland is only about 3 grams in its weight. And before the thymus become atrophy, it populates the secondary lymphatic organs and tissue with T cells. However, some T cells continue to do proliferation in thymus throughout an individual's lifetime. So as I told you that the pre-T cells originate in the bone marrow, they migrate to thymus for doing maturation. In thymus, we have T cells, dendritic cells, which are very similar to the dendrites of the neuron, and these dendritic cells come from the monocyte, and the epithelial cell, which can do maturation and educate our T cells. The dendritic cell and the epithelial cell are very important for the maturation process. I told you that the epithelial cell have long projections, and each of them can hold about 50 T cells. They educate T cells for us so they can easily find the antigen, and the epithelial cells can secrete a hormone which we call it thymic hormone or thymosin, and this hormone can help the maturation process. And only 2% of T cells survive in cortex. All cell debris are collected by dendritic cells. Epithelial cells go to the center of medulla and arrange in concentric layers. Then they are filled with keratohyalin granules or keratin, and we call them thymic corpuscle or Hassall's corpuscle. And we don't know what is the function of Hassall's corpuscle, but they are the graveyard of our T cells, which is located in our medulla. And if you look at this picture, you can see this thymic corpuscle. They are dead epithelial cells and T cells. They are located in the center of each thymic medulla. By aging, their number increase. We don't know what is exactly their function, but they are very important, but their number increase by age. And in this part, you can answer this question: where does hemopoiesis occur, and what is the function of the thymus, and how the thymic, the T lymphocyte, become mature?